As we're going through the trainings and the recordings are becoming more and more available for you guys, I'm really hoping that you guys are getting a chance to overview them, having some time to sit with it. Because the name defines it, right? Therapist training program is designed particularly for the therapist to help improve their quality of work, right? Help improve just the way they're working. And one thing I've realized from the experience is that it takes time. It takes time, revision, and a lot of openness and being able to have a lot of curiosity as well. What works for me as a therapist? How am I able to, if I was in the client's chair and if there was a therapist like me that was kind of responding and asking questions, will I feel basic questions, attunement? Will I feel unconditional positive regard? Will I judge the therapist for being congruent? Right? And then then once whatever answer comes up, whatever answer comes up, okay, oh, I wish there was a little bit more congruence. I hope there was a little bit more attunement. I wish there was a little bit more unconditional positive regard. I think I felt a little bit more judged here or there. Whatever the answer is, it's very important to befriend shame, right? It's very important to befriend shame, right? It's very important to kind of say, okay, this answer doesn't take me into a cycle of shame and I'm not good enough and all of those things. It takes me into an opportunity for growth, right? Improvement. Okay, I can actually withstand the discomfort that I'm receiving or getting from the honesty that I have. And I'm actually able to be like, okay, this is a little bit more curiosity, right? Like this is a little bit more interesting. If I was to work on this in time, I would get better, right? And if I am going to get better, then what happens is that my clients are going to be able to provide effectiveness of treatment. Okay, so all of those things are going to be there. Today is a really kind of good day because I think I'm going to be working on developmental immaturity, which was one of our absolutely, which is one of my most favorite models of not just treatment, but helping me better understand a client's case, right? And that's the stage of work that we're at. I completely agree. In our last lecture, we can rant about our challenges, which we face as being a therapist in Pakistan. It's not easy, right? Especially being in Pakistan, there's like cultural stigmas, then there's professional stigmas, then there's burnout challenges, and all of those things are very actively there, right? And I'm hoping that today particularly is a day that you guys get to really understand yourselves a bit more and thus map out the client a bit more. Today's going to be much more like a story. It's a particular model that we're going to be discussing. It's called developmental immaturity. Okay. Developmental immaturity highlights, it's a model created by Pia Mellody. Okay. It highlights that all boundary issues, attachment issues are a byproduct of wounding that takes place in childhood. Okay. That's the topic, developmental immaturity, right? It's a wounding that takes place in childhood. And what happens is that according to Pia Mellody, a child is born valuable, vulnerable, imperfect, dependent, and spontaneous. And I'm gonna show a slide that's gonna just be talking about that in much more detail. And it's also this particular slide is also available in the resource manual that's been shared with you guys also. So developmental maturity is a huge thing. How did I find out about this training and how has it helped me? And that's my intention because it really kind of changed the way I work, right? My background is particularly from a background of addiction, right? So I used to work in a rehab. I specialize working with addictions, and I was lucky enough to be sent to the UK, Broadway Lodge, to kind of learn more about addiction treatment because a person was starting up a rehab here and they wanted me to just kind of learn about the SOPs and the systems and basically the effectiveness of treatment. Okay. And when I went there, I met this lady called Hilary Betts, right? And she was one of my first mentors. Okay. And she taught me about the link between trauma and addiction. right? What she said was that addiction itself is a solution to a problem, right? And trauma is the real wound that causes an addictive behavior to take place. Whatever happened to you in childhood impacts the way you grew up, right? And the way you grew up then impacted your coping mechanisms, out of which one of them is an addictive mechanism. Another one could be codependency, right? And that is something that I really kind of found very interesting because I was like, oh, because the way she described the model really helped me understand that as therapists, sometimes we do have a wounding of codependency. How much to help? Where, do I feel worthy enough as a person without having had to give in a sliding scale, right? Without having to give that extra 10 minutes, right? And so I really linked it with that kind of understanding. It helped me with my practice. It helped me with addiction because I was able to better help addictive clients as well. I was able to help the families also because I was able to kind of understand languaging for the family also. But most importantly, what it did was it helped me case conceptualize. It gave me language for case conceptualization. And that is the reason, that is the way I use it. That is the way I train it. That's the way I'm going to encourage everyone to use it as well. The book that this is based off of is called Facing Codependency by Pia Mellody. If you want to read the book, please go for it. It's an amazing book. She describes it as she describes the addiction of codependency as the wounding of developmental trauma. That because of my environment, I got wounded, and now in order to heal that wound, I'm looking for validation or resources or anything outside of myself, right? And that's what the immaturity is. The immaturity is that the stuff that I need to heal is within me, and I'm looking for it from the outside, because that's how children do, right? The child can't self-soothe. The child can't self-heal, self-care, right? They need the mother, they need the external, they need another body outside of themselves to take care of their own needs, right? And that is the codependent immaturity that is taking place. And it's an amazing model, and we're going to go into it in a lot more detail today, right? So my request for you guys is to see it first from the perspective of self, right? Most of the examples that I'm going to be giving again today is going to be primarily as a sense of self, right? यानी कि मैं अपना example दूंगा. I'm going to give my own examples, and I'm really hoping that as I give my own examples, you guys are kind of seeing it from your own lens, right? And it's purely done to kind of maintain confidentiality, and so that you guys can just kind of understand it from your own lens. Okay, what else? Stages of where this whole training is at right now, right? So, and where do people get lost? People get lost in this kind of phase, right? Because what they want is they want to figure out the client, right? They will get lost thinking about transference and countertransference. We can call addiction of codependency similar to, so technically transference and countertransference is a mechanism, and codependency could be a wounding, right? So I'll give much more clarity about that also. So what is basically there is that a lot of people, they enjoy psychodynamic work. They enjoy figuring out the problem, right? That's what the mind is designed for. The mind is designed to problem solve, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean is that when a therapist is anxious, what they would do is they think that the best way to get rid of this anxiety is to actually figure out what the client's work is, right? And so what they do is they think about the client, right? They think about the client, they think about developmental immaturity, they think about transference and countertransference, they think about psychodynamic, they think about all the stuff that they need, which is an appropriate part of the work. It's not the first step. The first step is to self-regulate, right? So that the prefrontal cortex can come online, so that the body can come out of survival, so that when the thinking will happen, it will have a higher quality of thinking, right? It will have a detachment to it. It will have an evaluation to it in which what is my work and what is the client's work, right? All of those things are very important, because if you were to use this tool that we're going to be covering today before self-regulating yourself in order to figure out the client, you might miss out on a lot of information in terms of transference and countertransference, in terms of what are your parts that are being activated. Because a lot of people, when they're doing this work, they want to just exclusively see the client and they don't want to see their parts. And I think yesterday's training was primarily designed to really highlight that there is a part of the therapist that is at play that you've got to be very, very mindful for. Okay. So don't get lost in the glitz, the glamour of a model like developmental immaturity and all of that. First step is always self-regulating, so you can evaluate what are your parts or what are some of the else's parts, and then you kind of fit the model in for the client and kind of start languaging it. My intention is that you guys can start using the language of this stuff with your clients, with all of that stuff, with all of them, so that it becomes more useful for your casework, right? Okay. I hope you guys can see this. All right. So this is the model that we're going to be kind of working with, right? So this is the developmental immaturity model. How I'm gonna work through this is that I'm gonna tell it to you guys horizontally, right? I'm gonna tell it to you guys horizontally. So I'm gonna invite you guys to kind of follow along with me. I'm gonna describe each and everything. I know it might look very overwhelming with so many different pieces and parts, but I'm gonna invite you to just enjoy it like a story so far. Right? Do you have the recordings? You want to listen to it multiple times, go for it, right? For now, just to kind of absorb the information, just hear it and find relevancy with it, which means find some form of relatability as we go along the story. Once we've completed this whole story, which means from start all the way to end, you will have a better understanding of the full picture, right? Once you have a better understanding of the full picture, language will become even more nicer, right? So we're going to take this step by step and very slow. Okay. Okay. One of the things about this model, which I'm like, so I'll be very honest, right? I have found, I was sent to I met Hilary Betts almost now 10 years ago, right? So it's been a while since I've been introduced to this model, right? And I've trained it. I have showed people this. I've explained people this model, and I'm always a skeptic, right? So what that means is, help me find something better, right? And that's how I like it, right? You tell me that there's a better model than this, I would be like, and I've tried finding it. I found IFS as well. I found trauma informed therapy. I found TRE. I found other models, EMDR. I found many other models. But this model as a way of explaining trauma and how it impacts behavior is really good. It kind of fits the picture up. Okay, so how does it work? Basic understanding is that there is 5 innate values that a child is born with. Okay, step 1, imagine a child. Right. I remember when this whole training started, there was a reason why I wasn't able to attend the first training is because I had a baby that was just born, right? So it was on Friday was supposed to be the first training, and then we had to shift it to a Monday because so I have a very relevant example in terms of the kid. It's okay. So I've got like a 6 week now old baby now. So when he did not exist before, right? And he started to exist achanak se, right? Like tangibly arms, legs, head did not exist before. He started to exist right now. That itself has value. Not the gender, because my sister a year and a half ago had a baby daughter. Like वो arm, head, spongy body की जो एक value है, that's regardless, no matter what the gender is, no matter what the birth order is. They weren't alive, they became alive, and by default, they have value. Okay. It's not earned, value is innate. Okay. Which means that, for example, his life he's as valuable as I am. Do you get it? Like it's the same. Like they exist. I exist because I'm bigger in size and I have 30 years more, 35 years or more life experience. That doesn't diminish or increase my or his value. Okay, that's what value is. Okay, number one. So we're all born valuable. Born, right? We're all born valuable. Number one. Number two, vulnerable, right? He can't protect himself for like anything. उसको मतलब आप मतलब उसको मतलब इस तरह होता है कि आप अगर वो रात में सो रहा है and his like head is like this, then you have to kind of lift his head up because he's that young, right? Like he can't even lift his head up, right? Because I'm assuming that if you keep his head for this long, एक तरफ it's gonna hurt him, right? तो यानी कि वो इतना भी अपने आप को protect नहीं कर सकता कि वो अपना सर खुद से उठा ले, राइट एंड खाना वाना तो दूर की बात डायपर चेंज भी नहीं हो सकता उसका तो राइट इसका मतलब like he's at that level of vulnerability cannot protect himself and mammals are the only beings that require that level of attachment based protection from parents otherwise all animal other mammals zebras they all have survival instincts and so for example आपने देखा होगा zebra का बच्चा पैदा होता है उसको बोलते हैं चलो चलो जल्दी करो and they start to go into fight or flight right monkey also start to climb there's a lot of these other mammals have all of this stuff but when it comes to humans they rely primarily on bonding right? Like when a child cries, the mother's instincts or feelings kind of chemically even gets released in terms of suckling, in terms of taking care of the baby. And I was always like, we recently got a fresh example there that when he's crying, there is a certain kind of alertness that comes up that says, okay, what's happening? What's wrong? Why is he crying? Right? And it's not even I'm not hurting he's hurting, right? But I'm in alert fight or flight state because he can't protect himself. And I was like, that's probably how it's supposed to be. But they are absolutely vulnerable. They have no self-protection other than the amazing like survival response of someone else take care of me because I'm crying, right? Other than that loud scream that they produce, there's technically no self-protection that they can give. अगर आप 2 साल के बच्चे को भी I don't know, Karachi mein bahar chhod doge, there's no self-protection, right? There's absolutely no self-protection. Okay, so they're born valuable, did not exist. Achanak se they started existing. They're born vulnerable. That means that they can't protect themselves for shit. And they're born imperfect. His head is way too big for his body. He can't. So when you kind of and again, I did not realize it because it just recently happened. So ab mujhe un log ka bobblehead figure dikhta hai. It's like this like they can't hold their head up, right? So what happens is that if you don't support the neck, they go like this. There's a whole bobblehead thing happening, and you're like, what kind of anatomy is this, right? Like zebras did not have it. Even wolves are born with like hooves or some kind of physiologically protective balance कि वो walk कर सकते हैं, talk जो भी walk कर सकते हैं but not human babies. Human babies are super imperfect. Okay. Another thing that was super imperfect about him is like, I'll be very honest, the sponginess. I don't get it. Like their bodies are like super spongy and they can't even regulate their own body temperature. So you can see that imperfection is how they're supposed to be. One other thing was that even the hair that's what happens is like culturally you kind of get the baby kind of shaved hair, right? I was क्या बाल भी shave कर दो, right? So there's like all this other hair यहाँ पे and there's all this kind of line wali hair also. It's imperfect. It's not like he's getting like a fresh normal hairline also. It's all imperfect. That's how they're supposed to be. Valuable, vulnerable, imperfect, dependent. That means that they are going to they need someone to take care of them. They have needs and wants, right? Acha, it's very interesting. Khana wana to samajh aata hai, right? So for example, they have the need to eat, they have the need to sleep. Acha, the issue with that is that they're so dependent that sometimes that if they don't get sleep, they get wired. That means कि अगर उनको आपने सुलाया नहीं टाइम पे and they're crying or their food gets missed, so what happens is that they have trouble sleeping. So they go like, they're tired, they can see it in their eyes, but they're like, how do I shut this off? How do I shut this body off? So they need help to like go to sleep, right? They need like a calm person to kind of help them go to sleep. So that's the amount of dependency that they have on someone else also, right? And finally, spontaneity. It's not like they give a shit कि हमें 3 घंटे में उठना पड़ता है, right? Like they don't care, right? उसका हर 3 घंटे में feeding है, सही है, तो उसका हर 3 घंटे में feeding है, spontaneity है. He's not gonna be like, यार my mother and father just slept, so मैं अपना आधा घंटा थोड़ा सा रोना जो है वो रोक दूंगा ताकि उनको 10-15 मिनट की नींद और मिल जाए. Not possible. Spontaneous. जब भूख लगेगी तो बोलेगा, जब थकेगा तो बोलेगा, जब सोएगा तो बोलेगा. Absolutely spontaneous. Also, age appropriate. So spontaneity has a lot to do with age appropriateness. I would not expect a 6-week-old to have that kind of awareness that, oh, my mom is so tired. Please let me kind of not cry right now. Not possible. So that's what she said. She said that that is the nature of a child. Child are born like this. You, me, every single person that is attending this training, seeing it on YouTube, every single person was born this way, right? We were all born valuable, vulnerable, imperfect, dependent, and spontaneous. And I kind of repeat this again and again because this is sort of like our natural truth that we've forgotten, right? कि भाई मैं भी imperfect हूँ, right? मैं भी हर काम अकेला नहीं कर सकता, सही है. I need to be spontaneous also. That means I need to be age appropriate. I can't act like a child or I can't act like an 80-year-old, and I have value and I'm vulnerable also, right? That means vulnerability is inside of me as a human being also. These are all innate things that I have to stay connected to according to Pia Mellody. And what happens is that when trauma takes place, I lose it. Okay? यानी कि जब मेरे साथ ट्रॉमा होता है, सही है, तो ये चीजें जो है वो डिस्प्लेस हो जाती हैं. Okay, so pause. Now someone says कि भाई ट्रॉमा क्या होता है, right? ये तो like, and so I spent like, after learning this, I spent a lot of time understanding what trauma is. So there's many different definitions of it. So it's her definition is different, and so trauma is basically any sustained stress that's induced by the body long term. So yeah, that takes a toll. So it's not what happened to you, it's what happened to the body due to it. But according to her languaging, it's basically anything outside of nurturing, affirmations, and setting healthy limits. Right? So anything outside of nurturing, affirmations, and setting healthy limits is trauma, especially if it's sustained for a very long time. Okay. So that's how she defines it. However, you can choose whatever definition of trauma you want, right? The fact that the child fell, the fact that the mother had financial issues, the fact that there was a second kid that was born, doesn't matter, right? The story could be anything. Okay. And I'm going to tell you in as story mode as possible. But what happens is that then childhood trauma takes place, and that causes core issues and immaturities to form. Okay. And what happens is, so when it talks about value, okay, so what is the childhood core issue or developmental immaturity that forms? That, for example, because of a trauma, you start thinking that you're either better than or less than other people. That's what starts to take place. Trauma is when these needs are not met properly. Absolutely, right? So, for example, when affirmations, setting healthy limits, and nurturing is not there in the environment, right? So there's a critical parent, right? Nurturing की जगह, affirmations की जगह तनकीद हो रही है. Setting healthy limits की जगह सब चीजें इजाजत हैं या कोई चीज की इजाजत नहीं है. Or anything could be it, right? Any dysregulated parents could be anything. Our intention is not to blame. The intention is just वजह से भी there is a trauma that happened. Okay, developmental trauma or high intense trauma or ACE. What happens is that because of that, the values get skewed. So because of a trauma, and this particular core issues start developing before the age of 4, right? This all starts to develop before the age of 4. This is where the wounded child concept comes up, right? So there's an initial wounding that takes place because by the age of 4, the child does not have the resources to take care of themselves. They don't have the pretend not 9-year-old adaptive child yet hasn't born yet. You know, they're not pretending to be adults. They're सबसे पहली ठोकर. अच्छा, लड़का पैदा हुआ, लड़की नहीं पैदा हुई. अच्छा, fourth girl. I thought there would be a fourth, like 3 बेटियों के बाद एक बेटा पैदा होने वाला था. I'm talking about these cultural things. What else? What else? मुझे तो एक बेटी चाहिए थी, लेकिन बेटा हो गया. मुझे तो एक बेटा चाहिए था, लेकिन बेटी हो गई. You know, मैं expect नहीं कर रहा था कि हमारा एक और बच्चा हो जाएगा, लेकिन आज बच्चा हो गया. Line say you have a Rolodex of things that you think you heard and said, say those things. That is a trauma, right? And what that does is, mannat baby, right? Oh, 10 saal baad ek mannat baby hua hamara. Amazing, right? God gave me this child. Oh, right? Like there's this, I have to be very careful, right? So all of those things, right? So value un cheezon se upar niche hota hai. And that's the immaturity. What happens is that the child starts getting messages that they're either better than other people or less than other people. That's the wounding. So what happens is that creates self-esteem issues, right? So for example, when I was born, I was the first male born of the family. And what happens is that because of that, I was like, oh, finally, pehla beta paida hua, pehla beta. You get to start explicitly start receiving all this information. Oh, like, look at me. I'm the first male born of the family. Or iska beta, you get, so what happens is that as a child, before the age of 4, you start getting these tilts, right? And you start looking into your own life in terms of what were your tilts, right? Like regarding the messages that you got, were you given the message that you're better than Mannat baby, tum sabse badi ho, tum sabka khayal rakhogi, tum sabko sambhalogi, or less than, ये तो कुछ काम सही से नहीं कर सकती, ये तो काम सही से नहीं होता, इसने तो कुछ भी नहीं किया था, सारा काम हमारा मसला है, ये तो है. Better than or less than. And all of these time memory messages starts to kind of go into your implicit memory. Not even, so you won't even remember. This is all procedural memory that gets built by the age of 4. And what happens is you start, जिसको scripts बोलते हैं TA के अंदर, कि आप अपनी दुनिया बनाने लगते हो. And you start making out a map of the world in which you start identifying who are you in this world and what is your value in this world. And technically, you were born with value. However, because of the environment or the trauma that you were in, you got an immature. You got stuck in a place where you started to believe that you were either less than or better than other people. Not possible, but ho jata. Okay. Then what happens? Okay. Then what happens is that this script that you form in which you think that you're either better than or less than other people. And again, disclaimer, that is not true. Neither are you better than, neither are you less than anyone else. Okay. The only difference between me and my kid is that I have 35 years of experience in my work, in my job, in my life. He just started off fresh, right? Like technically, हमारा experience का difference हो सकता है, हमारा height का difference हो सकता है, हमारा weight का difference हो सकता है, value का difference नहीं है. राइट. वैल्यू मेरी और उसकी एक है. लाइफ एक्सपीरियंसेस और मैंने जो चीजें देखी हैं और उसने अभी तक 6 हफ्ते में जितना देखा है उसका डिफरेंस है. बट दैट इज नॉट वैल्यू. वैल्यू वाइज equal. That's true for every single person. What we started, this is a thing that we did in the CBT day as well, in terms of what we think, what we say to make ourselves feel better than or less than other people, and that's what this is particularly designed to help with. Okay. Now, you form this script. I formed this script that I was less than other people. So I would kind of, what would I do? I then grew up with that belief, right? I grew up with that belief. And so this wounded child of mine, which was from 4-year-old, which received that message, then in order to manage secondary symptoms, in order to manage this, became a 9-year-old child. And that 9-year-old child is called an adaptive child. राइट. सो हम लोग जब इनर चाइल्ड वर्क करते हैं, सही, इनर चाइल्ड वर्क के अंदर देयर इज नॉट जस्ट वन चाइल्ड, right? There's not just one wounded child. There's one wounded child, which is the child that got the wounding, which had those core issues. And then there's the adaptive child that learned how to live with that wounding. And that's when they start receiving the secondary symptoms. And so, what does the 9-year-old me do? Because I believe that I'm less than, I start creating environments that reinforces that message for me. I start messing around with things. I start being bad at school. मैं तो कर ही नहीं सकता, मेरे पास तो belief ही नहीं है, मैं तो कर ही नहीं पाऊंगा, मुझसे तो होगा भी नहीं ये काम. Yeah, if you're better than and you have that, then what you do is that देखो you will have kids that will start मेरा तो B तो आ ही नहीं सकता, मेरा तो A ही आएगा. That's the only message I'm gonna get, right? Like मैं तो A+, मैं तो like आप teacher आपने कोई गलती की होगी. Though you start creating environments that reinforces your wounding, and that is called negative control issues. For example, the best example is, for example, like group projects के अंदर, स्कूल के अंदर जो 5-6 जो मतलब for example आपके जो O levels वाले बच्चे होते हैं, उसमें group projects होते हैं. And you would see all the star, or like that one kid would be kind of doing all the work, and there'll be one kid that would be doing none of the work, and they will be kind of, they create environments that reinforces that message of your previous wounding that you got as a childhood, right? You start creating, and you'll be surprised how strong and unconscious negative control issues are all about reinforcing the beliefs that you got in your wounding. Okay. For example, better than children will also kind of not participate in things that they feel that they would not be able to be good at. Okay. Less than children will not participate in anything because they don't think they'll be good at anything, right? So those setups, and they will start then creating noise and environment जिसमें वो हो, right? So less than वाले बच्चे जो हैं वो तंग करने लगेंगे, शोर करने लगेंगे, ज्यादा आपको तंग करेंगे ताकि उनको participate करने की जरूरत ना पड़े, right? जिसके वजह से उनकी वैल्यू और अंडरमाइन होगी. बेटर देन चिल्ड्रन उन्हीं चीजों में पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे जिसमें उनको पता है कि वो अच्छे हो सकते हैं. Oh, I did good, right? Look at how well I'm doing. All of that stuff. Okay. So, born valuable, okay. Wounded child by the age of 4 gets the wounding of the trauma. It causes self-esteem issues. Ya to they think that they're better than, ya to think they're less than. Both are wounding. Okay. You're neither better than or less than anyone. Okay. They become adaptive children by the age of 7 to 9, where they start creating an environment that reinforces their messages that I am either better than or less than anyone else. And then they become adults, right? And what happens is that when this child, through this adaptive nature, becomes an adult, what they see is they start seeing problems in being intimate with other people. They start seeing relational issues. Relational maslas बच्चे को दिखता है. They start getting relational esteem issues. Validate me. Validate me, right? Tell me that I did good, right? That's where this whole, according to her, this whole sequence comes from. The reason for validation is so that you can tell me that I have esteem. Right? That's one of the reasons why I personally believe that validation isn't the right word in therapy from a therapist to a client. You can acknowledge the effort, you can appreciate the client, you can do so many other things, which is healthier than validating. Right? Because validating is negative control issues that reinforces the better than, less than for the client. Right? So the wounding stays, right? And that's what the relational esteem issue is. So they get relational esteem issues. So for example, better than people will be like around people that will be like, didn't you enjoy what I did? Like, look at how amazing I am. Look at how great I worked. Didn't you see that? Like, they will look for that positive affirmations from other people, right? In those relationships. Right, and the negative people will be able to create situations in which, in relationships, they'll be around people that will be saying, "You're not good, man. Kyun aisa karte ho? Why are you consistently doing this? Why are you doing this all the time, again and again? Why are you? Why are you? Why are you? Why are you?" right? And this whole trail is what happens when the value of a child is wounded due to trauma. Okay, that's one. Okay, story continues. Vulnerability. Okay, so what happens? I'm supposed to protect myself, right? I can't protect myself as a 0-year-old, right? Like a 0 to 6-year-old. My kid, he can't protect himself for anything. Now what happens is, if the parent or environment is too protective, right? Too protective. That means कराची की हालत खराब है, खबरदार जो आप घर से बाहर निकलो, आपने यहीं पे रहना है, आपने किसी दोस्त के पास नहीं जाना है, आपने अपने आप को ही संभाल, मतलब आप अपने घर, no one, हमारा, and that could be because of any reason, right? That could be because of, I have to be very careful, threats or safety issues. It's fine. The intention of doing this is not to blame anyone for anything, right? The intention is to help a better understanding of what has that caused. For whatever reason, if the boundary, if for example, protection, vulnerability or the protection is not appropriate, and if it's too much, right? Like for example, ladki ghar pe baitho, right? Like don't go anywhere, right? Stay at home and all of that stuff. Or it's like, I can handle myself. You're supposed to be the one that's supposed to handle yourself. Hong Kong kids, I mean, like Japan kids, at the age of like 4, go and travel in the bus, right? So there is this kind of boundary issue that takes place. Either the person becomes too vulnerable because they don't have any capacity to protect themselves, or they become invulnerable because all they've done is protect themselves and they don't need anyone to do that for anyone. And by the age of 4, right? By the age of 4, they already have gotten that wounding. That yato, they get too protected. For example, being a 90s kid, how do I say this? Right, being a 90s kid, having living up in Karachi, right? You can see generally, I can talk about myself that I came from a very protected household, right? Because I came from a very protective environment, what happened was that there was a lot of vulnerability, too vulnerable. Like I would get anxious when there would be like a loud noise or something, like someone will open, there'll be like that kind of, because if my parents were there and supporting and providing that space, it was like, okay. But as soon as I was left alone, too much protection was being given, right? And probably at that time, for them, it was considered necessary. But what it caused was that sense of high anxiety. In reverse, I met people who are like, dog eat dog world, go out, right? I was reading. So, for example, in Clifton, there are these kind of apartments, and niche there are the stores, right? And so what I've seen is that little like kids, they would go down, and they would kind of go to the store and get their own things. And this is by the age of 3, right? So super independent 4-year-olds. And what all of this does is that it creates boundary issues. You don't know how much to kind of feel safe with when it comes to the other person. So vulnerability wounding, born vulnerable, right? Then the wounding happens, which causes boundary issues to take place. Yeah, so you become too vulnerable, yeah, so absolutely invulnerable. And when that child, 4-year-old, grows up, what happens is he becomes the 9-year-old. And so what happens is he starts having resentment issues and raging. He's like, तू हटो ना, मैं खुद से कर लूंगा, क्या मसला है आपका, मैं कर लूंगा खुद से. Close the door. Yeah, I can't do this on my own. What do you expect me to do? How are you always kind of asking me to do things on my own? Please come here, right? Because too protected, right? And so what happens is that they don't have that capacity to feel safe within themselves, right? And so this 9-year-old has like all of these resentment issues that why are you always leaving? What's wrong with you? Why can't you just stay with me? Why is this an issue? Or rage. You've asked me to do this all my life. Then why are you asking me to do this now? 9-year-olds, right? Like really young kids pretending to be adults because they weren't given the right amount of safety. And again, it could be a byproduct of the environment. It's not about a person, or it's not, but whatever reason, there was a wounding that takes place to the vulnerability. And so when this person grows up, they start having enmeshment and avoidance issues. So that means don't leave me too close, or I don't need anyone, stay away. मैं खुद से कर दूंगा. I don't need anyone in my life. And it becomes an issue because they can't dial it, right? Why can't they dial it in? It's because it's coming from a wounding, right? And that's what all of this work is all about. It's about understanding that when you have someone coming in for, oh, I'm having trouble in my relationships, right? I don't know, I don't understand my, like the enmeshment, right? कि वो मुझसे प्यार करता है, क्या मुझसे प्यार नहीं करता, क्या वो मेरे साथ रहना चाहता है, क्या मेरे साथ रहना नहीं चाहता, वो मुझसे हमेशा बात कर रहा होता है, this person is always on my case, why is he always talking to me, how much is this going to work? You're picking that up and being like, I know exactly what the line is. I know exactly where the work is. The work is about, did they feel safe with other people in childhood? Were they too protected, or were they too much on their own, right? And how do you kind of reparent them? So that's the second line. So vulnerability issues cause boundary issues, cause resentment and issues and anger, which causes enmeshment and avoidance. And that's the trick. Two down. I hope you guys breathe, because I hope you guys are seeing your own stuff, right? I really hope that you guys are like, मेरे साथ क्या हुआ था, right? मेरा tilt कहाँ था? And I tell you what the common thing is going to be, both. Right? पहले ये था, फिर वो था, पहले ये था, फिर वो था. Don't worry, man. We're talking about early childhood, right? And so you'll have a tilt, and yes, things can change and people can grow and there can be shift happening post the wounding. That's what adulting is. For some people, sometimes what happens is they be less than, and then as they grow up and become adult and they find resources, they become like too much on the other side, right? And it's all just about finding that middle ground, right? And so as you guys are seeing yourselves, see it with kindness, see it with like compassion for self, all of those things. Okay. So valuable, vulnerable, and let's do now imperfect. Reality. Okay. For me, the best example of this is Alia Bhatt in Gully Boy. But the thing with that example is that not a lot of people have seen that movie. Is the point where attachment styles are built. Yeah, 100%, right? So attachment styles technically get built, Bowlby, right, in childhood before age of 4, right? So this is where this is another way of languaging some of the woundings that have happened, particularly this one. And this is the reason why I feel like this model really puts everything into perspective, like very specific. Okay. So I don't know how many of you guys have seen Alia Bhatt in Gully Boy. Right? Alia Bhatt in Gully Boy was good and perfect. Pretend good and perfect. Right? So what happens is that we start getting messages about my reality, about our reality. ये तो कितना अच्छा लड़का है, कितना अच्छा लड़का है, कितनी अच्छी लड़की है, कितनी अच्छी बेटी है, कितनी अच्छी बेटी 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 कितनी अच्छी बेटी है, कितनी अच्छी बेटी है, और कुछ भी, right? Like nothing else other than that, right? Like you get identified that your reality is that you can't be imperfect. That means you can't be not achhi beti, right? That means you have to be achhi beti because that's what you are, right? And what happens is that your reality gets imprinted again and again and again. ये तो नालायक 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 कोई लाइक का नहीं, ये तो कोई काम का नहीं है, ये तो कोई काम का नहीं है, ये तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता, ये तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता. All of these messages, what they do is they shape our reality. And what happens is that when we grow up, not even grow up, by the age of 4, we start having these reality issues. Good or perfect, bad or rebellious. Okay, that's the stilts that kind of happen. So the good or perfect Alia Bhatt version is, मैंने तो कुछ नहीं गलत किया, मैं तो कुछ गलत नहीं किया, मैं तो एकदम सही हूँ, मैं तो एकदम सही हूँ. Like I'm proper, right? And the bad and rebellious person is like, I don't care what you think of me, I'm gonna burn this whole place alone, right? Like, so that's the messaging that you get, right? You get completely like so you have to become you to take up that identity. If सब मुझे बुरा बोल रहे हैं तो मैं हूँ ही बुरा. Screw you, I don't care, I am bad, I'm not going to participate in school. And so what happens is these kind of reality issues start to kind of take place, right? And this is by the age of 4. And then what happens is that by the age of 9, you start having spirituality issues. Okay, pause. Okay. Spirituality in this particular model, and I also believe this is not just in this model, has to do with trust more than religion. So yeah, it has nothing to do with religion, has to do with trust. Do you trust a power greater than yourself? Do you trust that other people are not going to harm you? And do you trust that you have the capacity to do something? All of these are spiritual questions, right? All of these are spiritual questions. क्या मैं अपने ऊपर भरोसा रखता हूँ कि चीजें जो हैं कि मैं खुद कर पाऊंगा? It's a spiritual question. क्या मुझे ये यकीन है कि दूसरे मुझे नुकसान नहीं देंगे? It's a spiritual question. Do I believe that things are going to work out for me? Is a spiritual question, right? And in this particular model, we're exclusively talking from that spiritual kind of lens. It's not from that religious kind of context, right? So it's purely, and if you want to have that, that's fine, but it's purely from a spiritual context, right? So what happens is that this 9-year-old doesn't trust anyone. They don't trust their family, they don't trust their friends. The good person will not trust that if they show someone some bad part about themselves, that they would be okay. The bad person doesn't trust that anyone else will be able to actually see that they have any good in them also. They all have these spirituality issues. This is where they will be like A plus and you will see it in the movie also that she changes her grade, right? She changes her grade because she's like, no one will accept me if I'm not an A plus, right? Or the bad guy would be like, मैं तो मतलब care ही नहीं करता, आप मेरे बारे में क्या सोचते हो, right? There's a whole no one cares for me. I don't trust anyone cares for me, and that's why. And so this is by the age of 9, these kind of woundings takes place. And then what happens is that as they grow adult, they start being dishonest. So what did Alia Bhatt do? She hid her relationship from her family. She was being fully dishonest, right? What does bad and rebellious people do? They lie. They lie. They don't stop lying, right? So what happens is you're born imperfect. No one is born perfect. No one. No one. Big head, spongy body, line यहाँ पे. No one is born perfect. No one, right? But then what happens is या तो कितना अच्छा कितना बुरा, कितना अच्छा कितना बुरा by the age of 4. And what happens is you start shaping your reality with these kind of messages. I'm a good person. I'm a bad person. Right? And all that does is by the age of 7 to 9, you start having these spirituality issues. You start losing trust in people and things, right? And yourself. And then the best way to manage all of that stuff, dishonest. Just lie, right? Consistently lie. No one will accept me regardless, right? तो मैं झूठी बोलता हूँ. And that's how you kind of manage your reality. And you will see it. You will see it. Like when you have someone who's too good and perfect, you will see that they will not tell the full truth, right? They will say I'm not lying, but they are not going to tell the full truth, right? They're going to be like, that's not I'm lying. No, I'm telling the full truth because you're not trusting that someone will accept it, right? That's the wounding, which comes from the fact that your imperfections weren't accepted. Right? And what happens is that the way she kind of explains it is called perfectly imperfect. Everyone is supposed to be quirky and you're supposed to be you imperfectly. Whatever your height, build, eyes, face, color, personality, imperfect is supposed to be that way. You're supposed to be that way. But lie, right? Have to find a way to lie, have to find a way to manage it because of the wounding. Okay, so we got the third row down also. Then we have row number 4, right? So row number 4 is all about dependency, right? So what happens is that, so all your needs are met all the time. So for example, I live in Karachi. My family was like, no, stay, right? Can't go anywhere. Here's a toy, right? Like all your needs are met all the time, okay? Or none of your needs are met. And this comes usually sometimes when there's a financial issue that's happening in the family, right? And the family is overtly going through financial issues. So the kids are being told that father se nahi पूछना क्योंकि पैसे नहीं है हमारे पास, उनको बुरा लगेगा, right? So all of that stuff, other than spontaneity issue. So what happens is you get this tilt by the age of 4 in the terms of your dependency. Yeah, so you get too dependent because all your needs are getting met all the time. Or none of your needs are being met all the time. Right? So you're like, can't go to a doctor, हमारे पास पैसे नहीं है. पैसे is usually one of the cultural examples. There could be other reasons as well in terms of why needless, wantless. Okay? Why your needs are not met. So you become like, मुझे ज़रूरत ही नहीं है. It's fine. You shut that needs down. My favorite, I'll talk to you about the next one, right? So this is also a really good one for me, right? So because dependency होती है, everyone has needs and wants. Every human being, this little kid gets hungry, gets sick, can't like sleep when he can't sleep. He needs help, right? Like he needs that. If I'm consistently providing it and having no balance, then he becomes too dependent on me. And at a certain age stuck, it's fine. But if I'm not needing it at all, and this is something so advanced training, but just a caveat, dissociation starts from childhood. It's such a cool thing. Dissociation is such a cool thing, right? Like the kid, when they are not being taken care of, they will cry and cry and cry and cry. And then in order to survive, they would dissociate from the pain. And that's why they would go quiet. And it's such a cool, like survival wise, it's such a, like, you know, how much the body has internally in order to survive, right? That kids can dissociate. They start like, they go zombie mode, sort of dissociate, right? And that's like even a 6-week-old can say to you, needless, wantless. I don't have any needs, right? They shut down, literally. They dissociate from their own needs, right? And it's such a, like, I'm saying it cool, but obviously like it's, I'm coming from a very kind of like observational survival kind of mode here, right? But people who kind of go through this, they have their own experiences with it. So number 3, because of that 4-year-old having either too much of their needs met or having none of their needs met, being empty dependent or tilt at least, what happens is they have addiction issues. They're not able to self-manage their needs. So addiction issues is always about filling their void up with more, right? Addiction is all about, you, doesn't matter what the drug is. The drug could be relationship, chemical, non-chemical, does not matter. TV, phone, gaming, really doesn't matter what the drug is. But needs met, more. Can I have 5 minutes more? Can I have 5 minutes more? Can I have 5 minutes more? It's all about that. Or depression and physical illnesses. People who say, do you have like doctor? No. I don't need to go to the doctor. No doctor needed for me. No. I had a person, right? Because we do this with everyone we teach everyone this, right? Because I think it's a good model to kind of language, right? Everything that's happening. So this one person, right? Her physical health was at like bad, basically bad, not good. And you're like, go to the doctor. No, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I'm like, needless, wantless. Right? Needless, wantless, man. And again, I was also one of that persons where I was like, I don't want to go to the doctor. But then you have to reparent yourself to be like, your needs are important. And if you are feeling not well, go to the doctor, right? Don't be needless, wantless, right? And so it's really in that kind of space. Addiction can be related to someone's company as well. Yes, someone needs to always be. Yep, that is called codependency. Absolutely. That's basically the model she's also creating as well. It's applicable for addiction also. And so what happens is you have problem with interdependency, right? And that's what it is, right? So because your dependency needs are not met properly, you either become too dependent or you become anti-dependent, which causes addiction issues and physical needs issues. So what happens is, so interdependent is, मुझे अगर मदद चाहिए तो मैं पूछ सकता हूँ, मैं बोल सकता हूँ, लेकिन अगर मेरी वो फॉर एग्जाम्पल और मुझे ना भी आ सकता है, and that's fine, क्योंकि मैं अपना ख्याल भी रख सकता हूँ, right? So that is what being interdependent is. Anti-dependent is, I will never ask for my need. काश वो मेरी बात दिमाग में समझ लेता, कि यार मुझे जो है वो आज आइसक्रीम खाना है, right? Like it's not possible, right? Say it. You have to say it. That's what being inter. I want some ice cream today. Do you think you're going to be able to grab it? Sure, I can grab it, right? No, I can't grab it. I'm going to order ice cream for myself. Interdependent. Codependent is उसने नहीं लाया तो मैं तो नहीं इस्तेमाल करने वाली. I'm not going to have ice cream also today, right? Like I asked him for ice cream and he did not give me ice cream, so no ice cream for me and I'm sad, right? Because I need that other person to fulfill my needs. Codependent. That's what codependency is, man. Right? That's the whole shebang of codependency. कि वो करेगा तो खुश हूं, नहीं करेगा तो खुश नहीं हूं. No. Interdependent is करे good, नहीं करे good. No problem. Not codependent. I will. So that's the best part about relationships, right? When you have two interdependent people, I could do it my own, and I'm choosing to be with you, right? So, for example, I can go and have an ice cream by myself, and I can go have an ice cream with you. You can have ice cream by yourself, and you can go have an ice cream be with me. The choice of having an ice cream with you is better, and just in case you're not there, I can still go have my own ice cream also. Like it's the freedom of feeling safe in a relationship, knowing that you can meet your own needs and the other person can, and you can ask for your needs to be met also. That's what this line is. Okay. So far, so good, right? And I'm hoping you guys are seeing all your family members by now also, right? I'm hoping you guys are seeing your rishtedars and your kids and all these other, like, this by the time we reach number 4, we're starting to see like, oh shit, right? Like my family is also I'm hoping there's a lot of like relatability that's kind of kicking in terms of family, in terms of everyone. So I hope that kind of kicks in as well. Okay. Right? Then we had number 5. Okay. So we were born valuable, right? We were born vulnerable. We were born imperfect. We were born dependent, and we were born spontaneous, right? Spontaneity is being age appropriate. For example, my 6-week-old shits in his pants, basically poops, age appropriate. Absolutely age appropriate. The 6-week-old, he's like struggling to poop or pooping in his pants, not a big deal. It's expected, right? But if my 5-year-old does it, then it's not age appropriate, right? So moderation, right? So spontaneity is the capacity to be able to moderate yourself, right? आपके खुद का एक dial होता है. So for example, as a 35-year-old, I can be spontaneous and go out to like a dawat at like night, right? Like I can go out with friends. But I've got to be responsible, right? I've got to be like, मैं रात के सुबह के 5 बजे तक नहीं नहाने वाला, right? There's no way that's happening, right? I'm going to go to like 11, right? Or whatever an appropriate time for me would be. That is called containment, right? And so what happens is that because of the childhood wounding, there's a containment issues that takes place. And what happens with this containment issues, this is usually happening when a adult sibling is given the responsibility of a younger sibling. The adult sibling is not the parent, right? But they're burdened by the responsibility of being the parent because the parents themselves are full. They don't have the capacity, okay? Because this is child number 8, whatever, right? This is child number 8, and the child number 1 had to take care of child number 2 and 3, right? Because 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are being taken care of by a mother, for example, right? But still, child number 1 is not the mother, right? A 6-year-old child cannot become the parent of a 4-year-old child, right? So what happens is that for the person who is the adult, they become controlling of others. right? So all of their moderation is all about how do I control you, because not willingly, but like I was burdened by this responsibility. I wasn't allowed to be a 6-year-old. I had to be an adult, right? And because I had to be this adult at a very, 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 very young age, I had to be in control of the situation so that the parents who are necessary for everyone's survival are okay, right? And what happens to the young person or the young child that's being controlled by someone else is like, they're like, you're not my mom. I'm going to go out of control so that my mom can actually come in. And what happens is they stop containing themselves at all. They start becoming even more out of control. So you have one person that becomes controlling of others, and you have another person, child, that becomes out of control. And that's the wounding that kind of takes place, because technically taking care of each other is none of their responsibility. Taking care of each other is the parents' responsibility. And life and stress and intention is not to blame the parents, but like this is what we're just discussing here. What happens as an outcome of due to whatever overwhelm is taking place, right? And it could just be halat, right? And most likely it's halat. So that's what takes place. So spontaneity, a child is not either allowed to become a adult or they get suppressed as a child. And so what happens is that when they become 9-year-olds, they have intimacy issues, right? Intimacy is being able to be with someone without losing yourself. That's what intimacy is, right? I am me, you are you. I can like a few things that you like. You can like a few things I like. But because I'm liking a few things you like, doesn't mean that I'm not becoming who I am, right? That is what intimacy is. And so what happens to that 9-year-old is that they become really like, "Ugh, why are you always controlling me, right? Why are you always telling me what to do, right? Tumhe kabhi bhi baat nahi sunte. Why are you never listening to what I'm saying?" And the 9-year-olds start to say it, right? You're never listening to what I want you to do, right? And that's because they're either out of control or controlling of others, which is causing that intimacy issues to take place. And what happens then is that when they grow up, they start getting intensity in the relationship. Intensity in the relationship means screaming matches. Ah, why are you always like this? Right? Because when they are in a relationship with someone else, they feel either they're being controlled by the relationship or they feel that they have to control the relationship in order for their safety to be there. And it's all coming from that wounding. Okay. It's a lot, right? अभी तो थोड़ा सा और इसको dissect करते हैं. But there's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's a lot, right? But I'll tell you one thing. Yeah. None of the clients that come in, they come in because of the first 3 rows. Clients come in because of these issues, right? Clients come in because they are feeling relational self-esteem issues, because their boss isn't validating them. Client feels that they're feeling enmeshment or avoidance is because they're having trouble in other relationships in their life. They feel they can't be honest with anyone. They're having problems with either anti-dependency, doing too much on themselves, or being completely codependent, needing someone else to take care of them, or they're having certain fights in their relationships. That's why they're coming to therapy. Okay. And what happens is that when you have this model, you can work backwards. Okay. And when you work backwards, you can really figure this stuff out, right? Okay. What was the childhood like? So, for example, client says, I don't think I can be my true self in front of people. That means that there was a rejection of that self, of that bad or imperfect side in childhood, right? Client comes in and says, I'm not sure if this other person is I'm afraid that the other person might leave me. Enmeshment issues. You can kind of map, okay, technically what that means is that in childhood, there was a lot of protection around, right? And that was the wounding that kind of took place. I'm always having fights in relationships. I'm always feeling like the other person is trying to control me in a relationship. That means in childhood, what happens is that you're actually feeling you were feeling controlled or had to control other people. I had to control your younger siblings and all of that stuff. Okay. So for example, what mine were is that I was in growing up, I was less than, too vulnerable, bad or rebellious, too dependent, and out of control. That was my line, right? Up now, what happens is that you know me because you now know where my tilts are, right? अगर आपको मेरा tilts पता चल गया, आपको technically मेरे बारे में almost सारी चीजें आती है. Similarly, if you ask yourself also, what were your tilts? Tilts, right? Tilts. Was I by the age of 4, was I feeling better than or less than other people? Better than, less than. Okay. Did I have boundary issues? What were my boundary issues like? Right? Was I feeling too vulnerable? Yeah, I was feeling too vulnerable or invulnerable. Like I had to do things on my own. Okay. Was I like good or perfect or bad or rebellious? Like, did I had to make sure that I was okay all the time, good all the time, or I was like, I don't give a shit about anyone? Like, okay, right? Was I too dependent or anti-dependent? Right? Like, did I feel like I needed too many things to be okay, or did I like feel like I don't need anything and I खुद कर लूंगी सारा? मुझे किसी मेरी कोई needs ही नहीं है. Could be environmental also, right? And was I always feeling controlled or was I always feeling out of control? Right? Like, what was it? Did I want to control things or did I feel like I wanted to have it out of control? Like, I didn't want anyone to control me. What were my tilts? If you ask yourself these things, you will figure out your immaturities. Right? हर किसी की है. And then the step becomes to repair it. Okay. Is this map clearer? Right? Because we still got like a bit more to cover, but like in terms of the healing part. But do you have any questions so far from the map? Because we're going to go into the re-healing process, but like so far so good. Okay. And if you have any questions, I'm available on the email thread. Watch the videos as well. We can rewatch the videos also. So now, how does the healing take place? Okay. Number one, the therapist does the work first, right? Like, sort your stuff. It's not a destination, it's a process, right? It's not like I'm healed. There's no such thing as healed, right? There is neuroplasticity. Nowadays, languaging has become so good, right? Because technically, if you integrate this to neuro stuff that's coming up, you would recognize कि ये जो pathways wounding की वजह से बनते हैं, तो ये वो रहेंगे और वो diminish होते हैं over time. So how do you how do you use this work in order to case conceptualize the client, right? That's something that we're going to go into next. I'm curious about polarization. That's perfect, right? And could one be rebellious? And so yes, right? Your rebellion is part of your like screw the world, right? But that's as an adaptive child capacity. That wouldn't be as a wounded child capacity. Because as a wounded child, 4-year-old, you don't have those kind of brain functions, right? But as an adult, you can language it in the manner that I'm so like anti the system that I'm being bad and rebellious with it, right? Anarchy on all of that stuff. So, but that's a way of dealing with it much later, right? So, how do you map it out? So, first of all, you have to remember that the kids were like they're born with valuable, vulnerable, imperfect, dependent, and spontaneous. That's number 5. That's the 5 things you have to always have in your mind. So, when you have a client and they're letting you know their history, right? And they're talking to you and they're telling you about sort of like what was happening for them, what was their work, what was their relationships like. What you're doing is you're languaging them with these tilts. Okay, client self-esteem, better than, less than. Okay, client's boundaries, too vulnerable, invulnerable, right? Client's world reality, bad or rebellious or good or perfect. Dependency issues, right? Are they too dependent or anti-dependent? And that could not just be about material things, it could also be about like relational things, right? Are they out of control or controlling of others? You do not like overwhelm the client with this map. You're using it in your head to just kind of figure out or give language to your case conceptualization. कि अच्छा, अब मुझे पता चल गया कि client has less than, too vulnerable, bad or rebellious, too anti-dependent, and too dependent and out of control. Imagine if these are the tilts that you're able to find. You will map out the work one by one. Okay. Even though they're talking about to you also, they're talking about, oh my God, like I'm doing good, right? Is this like I'm probably one of your most like consistent clients, right? That have always been there and have always been for you. And they could be saying those things, or they could be telling you, the relational esteem will come in terms of, like, imagine if they're telling you, like, I've really tried to work hard, but I'm not really sure if I'm less than, right? I'm not really sure if I can be a good therapist or I can be a good person. मैं sure नहीं हूँ कि मैं अच्छा कर सकूंगा नहीं कर सकूंगा. What they're doing is they're trying to control the situation and getting you to respond in a certain manner that reinforces their certain belief systems, right? By either playing the victim or by playing the narcissist or by playing all of these things, they want you to kind of agree to them that I'm better than you, you're less than. Okay. But what you're doing is that you're going to the source. What was the value? What were the value that you were given in childhood? Like, what was your value like in childhood? Like, how did your birth order define things, right? Like, was there importance given to you, right? आपको बचपन में value, like, आप ये मानते हो कि आपकी value innate है, right? या आपको लगता है कि आपकी बचपन में, right? आपको लगता है कि you were born with value, or do you feel like you have to earn it somehow? Right? And what you start doing is you start asking questions that help them reflect about this particular time, the time in the middle, before their wounding had happened, and before, sort of like after earlier than their wounding had happened, take they can start reflecting that those were the environments that changed the way they were born, right? And when you have that, so rather than getting lost in the, yes, yes, you're my best client, no, no, this is not how it works, you're asking questions that are providing effectiveness of treatment. You're not getting lost in the map. You're getting, actually, you have a roadmap that says any client that comes in with relational esteem issues, ask them questions about their value. What are their beliefs about their values? How do they value themselves? What are they doing to value their worth? Right? Do they find any joy in doing so? Ask them questions about that. And that will create healing. That's one aspect of it, right? Similarly, enmeshment and avoidance, right? So, for example, if a client comes in, I'm always worried that someone will leave me, or I'm always worried that people will kind of, I don't need anyone, and my wife keeps on complaining that मैं हमेशा सब काम खुद कर लेता हूँ, and so I get sometimes very anxious and angry that they're always annoying me. Okay, who was there to protect you when you were growing up? Right? Like, who were the people around you that helped you? Were you too protected, or were you not given enough protection? Right? Did you become? Did you have to take? Did you have to take things and protect yourself at a very early age? So you're asking the questions that can help them become more aware about their own process. Technically very psychodynamic in nature, very kind of early childhood kind of causes adult experiences in nature. However, this map helps you ask the right questions. And this is something that I've experienced. You have clients that are being dishonest in relationships. Were there people around you that accepted your flaws when you were growing up? Were there people around you that praised and saw the goodness in you also, and kind of praised? What were some of the messages you got before the age of 4 in terms of how good you were and how flawed you were, and are both okay for you right now as an adult, right? All of those things kind of come in. How these questions can help in the healing process. So, humanistic, and what happens is you have this belief that every person has a desire to self-actualize. Okay. What is really happening is that the people don't know where this stuff is coming from, right? They haven't learned this model. उनको ये नहीं पता होता कि जो मेरा अपना current belief है आज अपने बारे में, वो technically मेरा है ही नहीं. वो मुझे मेरे बचपन से मेरे environment से मिला है, right? And so rather than saying it to them, currently जो आप अपने बारे में सोचते हो, वो आपको बचपन में किसी ने बोला होगा जिसकी वजह से आप अपने बारे में ऐसा सोचते हो, right? Because as soon as you say that, defenses, राइट मेरे माँ बाप तो बहुत अच्छे थे, मेरे माँ बाप तो बहुत जबरदस्त थे, आपको क्या बात कर रहे हो, ऐसा थोड़ी होता है, ऐसे थोड़ी होता है, blah 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 blah. Defenses. No one likes to blame their early gods, right, for this stuff, right? Because no one wants to do that. But when you ask questions, right, and it's called motivational interviewing, when you ask questions and help them understand and help them connect the dots themselves. So rather than you overtly saying it, right, you're asking questions that then can help them reach the same conclusion. It bypasses resistance. But for that, you have to do the mehnat. You have to do mehnat, right? You have to know this model. You have to stay calm. You have to stay regulated. You have to be curious. You have to do all the stuff that was discussed in videos 1 to 5. Right? Your video 1 to 5 ka sara content, you have to do all of that. Only then can you have the thinking to ask the right question in that moment. And when you do, it will help the client click. Right? It will help the client click, and it will help them understand better in terms of what their dots were that caused them to behave this way. Right? So what happens is they are more open, they are more understanding. Then the next stages of treatment will come up, right? So that's what these stuff is for. Dependency, right? Where how was the financial situation at your home when you were young, right? Were all your needs being met? Were too much of your needs being met, right? Subtext, too much, identifying that aapki har khwahish puri ho rahi thi. Your languaging of the way you ask the questions that can help develop the client's own understanding about their own process has to be mindful. You have to be very mindful. Your intention is not to jump the gun because you're excited about getting them to that point, right? You have to stay regulated and match their pace, right? Because all of this awareness can be overwhelming for the client, right? Because it goes like, I didn't know too much. I did not know that the reason why I'm feeling enmeshed right now with everyone is because when I was young, there was like so many people around me to protect me, and that's what I need right now. And too much, right? So so you have to contain video number 2, right? And then ask the questions that can help the client really understand what these links are. Okay. Spontaneity, did you have an elder sibling? Or did you have elder cousins? Were they very controlling? Or did you feel like you could be yourself? Or did you feel like there was no restrictions on you? All of that stuff. So you can, and again, what I would suggest is, I'm a very pro ChatGPT person, right? So what you do is you ask ChatGPT, किस तरह के मैं और सवालात पूछ सकता हूँ? Right? Again, use it as an assistant tool, right? Ask that, right? Give me like 30, 44 more questions that I can ask the client that can help them, make them become more aware about their value, vulnerability, imperfection, dependency, and spontaneity. You can even ask it without it shaming the client, right? And it'll give you some things that you can just kind of self-study on. Okay. अच्छा. Stage 1, client को पता चल जाता है कि भाई मेरा यहाँ पे linking है. Right? That means that my current behaviors are associated to the woundings that have happened and experienced in childhood. Okay. What's the goal? The goal is not the wounding. The goal is the healing that comes after the wounding. Which means what? That they're able to connect to their value in the present moment. That aapka, right, value is equal to everyone else. That means you're not better than or less than anyone. आप vulnerable हो. That means आप God नहीं हो और neither आप कांच के बने हुए हो. Right? That means आपको मदद भी मांगनी है और आपके अंदर ये सलाहियत भी है कि आप अपने आप का दफा भी कर सकते हो. आप imperfect हो. What that means is कि भाई flawed, right? Flawed. That means you're flawed. That means that you're not all flawed, neither are you all perfect, right? You're in that kind of perfectly imperfect, and you're always striving for betterment and growth and improvement, but that is never going to say that you're ever going to become perfect, right? You're always going to try and improve and become better. Dependency, that means that you have needs that have to be asked for and can be fulfilled by yourself. Spontaneity, you will be able to be age appropriate. That means as a 35-year-old, I'll act like a 35-year-old. If I act like a child, I do it for a short period of time. I won't stay in a child state in certain situations all the time. Neither I will become like grandpa and like be at like 90, act like a 90 and kind of, and I'll do what 35-year-olds do. I will do what 20-year-olds will do, like whatever that is. Okay. Once you figure this out and have agreed with the client कि भाई हमें यहाँ पहुँचना है, कैसे पहुँचेंगे? इस पर्टिकुलर मॉडल से हमें इनर चाइल्ड वर्क का टूल जो है वो बहुत अच्छा मिल जाता है, right? Because what we're doing is we're really along the way getting to see what did our wounded child look like and what did our adaptive child look like, right? Both of those two things became visible. Okay. Okay, tricks about working with inner child work. Never work with the child directly. It is the adult themselves that has to connect with the child, not the therapist. "Aao, main aapke bachche ko sambhal lun." No, right? That is way off, way off, right? There is boundary issues, there is transference there, there's too many things are happening there. Don't. Your job is to empower the adult. The adult them, the present them, the आज जो मेरे सामने जो बालिग आदमी औरत बैठी हुई है, बैठा हुआ है, that person is responsible for two children. That person is first responsible for the adaptive child, that is the secondary symptoms, which is having intimacy issues, spirituality issues, anger and resentment, negative control issues. They're the ziddi one, right? They're the one that is the mask, the defenses, the person's like protective mechanism. They are not gonna let go of the safety that they had to figure out. That was a very important thing, right? And that's one of the reasons why you have to do this work with a lot of kindness and a lot of patience, right? So first, what you do is you empower the adult. What are some adult resources that you have today that allows you to do this work? Number one, always from the position of adult. Never direct child. Because जब आप चले जाओगे तो कौन संभालेगा? Right? आप शुरू से उन्हीं को खुद मुख्तार कर रहे हो, and so be mindful of your own codependencies, right? And be mindful of your own nurturing needs and all of those things, which you have to do by figuring this stuff out for yourself. Okay, number one. Number two, when you're dealing with this, you first have to build the relationship between so there are three people in this model that you have to work with when it comes to reparenting yourself. Number one, the adult, then the adaptive child, then the wounded child. Okay, Pia Mellody has this amazing experiential training or model called post-induction therapy. I'm not going to do that right now, but it's an amazing process, right? It's a gestalt primarily, right? And so in this particular tool, you can use different tools that you have. You can use a gestalt, or you can use different kind of things that can kind of help you. Depends on the work that you've been able to do, right? So the adult, you resource first. Now what happens is that adult goes and talks to the adaptive child. Okay. I don't know how many of you guys have kids, right? I don't know how many of you guys have kids, but okay, this adaptive child, do you think he's going to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm so happy that you're here now. Here you go, take over." Do you think that's what's going to happen? Right? Or do you think they're going to be like, "Who are you? And why should I trust you? And how come you were not here before? And oh my God, like I have a lot of anger and I have a lot of spirituality issues and I have a lot of intimacy issues. And आप कौन होते हो जो अचानक से अभी मेरे सामने आके मुझे बोलोगे कि मैं अपनी सारी ताकत छोड़ दूं? अच्छा, इतना आसानी से." If you think this is going to be easy and like superficial, no, it's not. It's absolutely not going to be easy. You have the therapist who's the facilitator has to have trust. You need to have had your spirituality issues and all of these things sorted for yourself, right? Because when you do this work and you're facilitating them, you need to know that it is not the kid's job. And with kindness and support, you have to help the adult build that relationship with that adaptive child, that the adult is now strong enough. Not always, but strong enough now. And when they are, and then there will be this grieving that will happen. And we will do like a whole day. Like I can do a whole day, but I can do like a lot of time on grief, right? Grief is a different process on its own, but there will be grieving that will happen. And you will allow that grieving to take place because finally that adaptive child, the hatyar thamna, right, can put the hatyars down. But it's going to be a process and you need to figure out based on the therapist you are in terms of how you're going to facilitate that process. the adult client has to consent to it also. You have to really resource them before you do any of this work. Number one. Okay. Now, what they will start noticing is, and none of this happens in one session. This happens over multiple sessions. You're just kind of having the awareness about having these kind of conversations and using this kind of language. Okay. Now that the adaptive child is kind of a friend of sorts, right? A more of a partner. What you will see is that you will see, hopefully see some of the intense symptoms that the client is facing in today's life. You will start noticing that kind of go down in time. It will happen if the adult is in charge and also taking care of that adaptive child. Okay. But does that mean that the wounding has healed? No. Now they have to go to the wounded child, right? They have to go to the wounded child, and now they have to होता है ना कि like अंधेरे कमरे से बाहर निकालना, right? Like they have to now take that wounded child out of that space, right? And that requires what? That requires, again, trust, patience, kindness, nurturing. This kid is going to be a little bit more easier to come out of because they don't have the hard shell that the adaptive child has brought up. However, be very mindful that the adaptive child is not really friends with the wounded child. Have you ever had two kids? I just had two kids, but like generally, sometimes the two kids are not the best of friends, right? Especially अगर एक बच्चे के वजह से दूसरे बच्चे को बहुत ज्यादा डांट पड़ती है, right? And so the reason why I'm sharing all of these steps and the reason why I'm sharing all of this process is be mindful, right? Be mindful, be cautious, be curious, be open, ask the client the questions, right? Understand that these steps are something that you can ask them about. How does the adaptive child feel now that the wounded child is also here with us? Would you want to give the adaptive child another name? Would you want to give the wounded child another name? How is it like when they are together now? Are they safe? Are they open? Are they feeling safe with you? How are you feeling now that you have connected to those two? How is your current body feeling right now? How does it feel to take on all the responsibility of these two kids? Do you feel you're ready for it? Do you feel you have the safety for it? What resources do you think you're going to use when you're going to be? There's a million questions you can ask, right? It's the niyat that counts. This is the type of work or the quality of work that you guys have to kind of eventually be curious about. Because this is what real healing is, right? Once you've done the first 6 videos, right? This is where it really kind of comes down to when it comes to that healing process. Okay. So, number one, empower the adult enough that they can go through all of this process, right? Can you imagine taking on one kid that was so defensive and then the other kid and they don't like each other and all of this is being done by the adult, and while the adult has all of these other shits happening in the current life? So you can see how much resourcing is going into the adulting, right? And that's the process that you have to kind of go through. Then all 3 of them, right? What you do is you kind of, again, help it internalize, right? So help it like tools like writing a letter to the children, writing a letter from the children with the non-dominant hand, right? There are many, many different tools that you can use that can help personalize this. Okay, imagine there's a place in your heart and those kids are living there, right? How often will you visit that? What does that place look like? Does it look like a ghar? Does it look like a garden? Visual, this is all a gestalt. This is all a gestalt. You help them internalize this. And then can you imagine what empowerment in the body would feel like once they've gone through this whole process? Right? Will they feel that they can connect to their value? Will they feel that it is okay to be vulnerable? Will they feel that their imperfection is accepted? Will they feel that it's okay to be dependent on other people? Will they feel it's okay to be spontaneous? Right? That's why they're coming to therapy, right? They're coming to therapy to get all of this work done. Right? So this is a tool that can just help you map out a client and heal it, right? while you have all these other tools that we've also discussed, it's all integrative in nature. This is not सिर्फ यही follow करना है और school में सिखाया है इसका exam होगा, nothing. This is not that, right? This is a tool that you use and you find your own relationship with this tool. The more you will use it, the more you will language it, the more you will see your family with it, the more better you will be. What I would suggest also is teach it to someone, right? If you teach this tool to someone, आपको खुद better समझ आएगा कि अच्छा ये होता है, फिर ये होता है, फिर ये होता है, फिर ये होता है. Teach it to someone, man. Teach anything that you've learned here already, right? If you teach it, you have all the resources. I've given all the manuals. The more you teach it, the better it is going to be for you also in terms of it, right? So this will help in your case conceptualization, right? And your own personal regulation will also help. And what I have noticed in the work that I've done right so far with this thing is that it really helps. So that's the end of today, right? I really hope that this was helpful for you guys. It provided a lot of content. And again, this is a lot of heavy content, right? So you can see that har hafte, I'm hoping there's a lot of heavy content that you can kind of just stay with you. It'll help you kind of grow as a therapist. It'll help you develop as a therapist. Where we are at is we're done number 7. We have 4 more to go, right? Out of which we're going to do addiction next week, then grief, then somatic therapy, and then there's going to be one more, right? Which is going to be our ending day as well. So there's still a lot of good content sort of like yet to be covered, right? So I'm hoping that all of this kind of finds you of value. And I'm really hoping to see you guys next week at like 3 p.m. again. Okay. Take care, guys. Seeing which developmental sites you guys are at. Yeah. So take care. Have fun.